Hello, and welcome to our episode of Don't Mess with the Mommas. Mommas, Mommas. Don't forget, our motto is You are the protagonist, not the victim of your destiny. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I'm Arlaana Black, and I'm here today with Christopher Marsala. And our theme today is music, the universal language. Christopher comes with quite the bio. Let me share. Christopher holds an MFA in elementary music education from the University of Bridgeport and a BFA in music. He previously taught in Connecticut and is currently a music teacher in South Carolina. So fortunate to have you, Christopher. A devoted lover of the stage, he has held lead roles in Phantom of the Opera, Elton John and Tim Rice's Aida, and Twelfth Night. He performed at St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican in Rome and Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. He also received the inaugural Micah Fine Arts Teaching Scholarship at Connecticut College in 2022. Thank you so much for joining today, Christopher. So let's jump right in. Question one. Why did you decide to pursue a career as a music teacher, and what about music do you love?
First of all, Arlena, thank you so much for that phenomenal introduction. I even had to remind myself, wow, I did all of those things the past decade. So really thrilled to be with you on your spectacular podcast. And it's so great that we're discussing music and also connecting it to Buddhism because when I started my teaching career, it was actually right around the same time that I began my Buddhist practice. So I started my education career in March 2018. I had been doing a lot of jobs early on in my 20s. I actually worked as an associate editor for an astrology website. So I was doing a lot of
Wow.
social media content. Yeah. Doing even kind of like learning how to write a book and how writing notes and taking down dictation and all the sort of creative ideation that comes into producing an intellectual or creative work. But once that contract ended, I was doing the typical 20 something jobs, being a Starbucks barista, working at a candy store, probably ate about half of the store. And then
Yay.
I also worked as, yeah, I have a sweet tooth and was a server and a bartender. And kind of was also very good at either quitting or getting fired from jobs in my early 20s because I really had to have a strong sense of purpose.
Sure.
And around that time, March of 2018, I had a phone interview for a charter school in Bridgeport, Connecticut for like a long-term building substitute position for middle school students. And I remember going in on the first day and no word of a lie, I probably cried. I actually did cry. But then by day two, I don't know, something just clicked and my whole energy just aligned. By the end of the week, I had a group of sixth grade language arts English students reading Animal Farm and using some very sophisticated vocabulary. I
Oh
even
my,
remember one of the instructional coaches coming in and saying, Mr.
wow.
Marsala, we've never even seen words like that on our board. So just,
Wow.
I think of that mantra of like raising the bar. I've always felt like Verizon's mantra spoke to my spirit. So yeah, and then about 3 months after that, getting that position, I was re-shakabuku'd for the third time. For those of you that aren't familiar, shakabuku is when somebody's introducing you to the practice of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And this was a very dear college friend who actually
Mm.
was living in New York, an actor, and I met him at the New York SGI Center. And for whatever reason, because it was the third time that we had discussed and connected, it was my grandfather's 80th birthday. We got to talking, and I was sharing about my education career and my early struggles. Didn't have as much capacity for classroom management as I do now, and knowing about early childhood development and even teenage development. But then between the chanting and teaching music, I saw a very definite causal relation between
Yes.
as I was developing my character and my practice, and then my musicianship and my ability to really teach and not just to teach facts, but also to like teach by example and model. And I think that's
Mm.
something that's very,
Mm.
it's one of the more challenging things to do because it's one thing to say, learn all these facts, memorize it, learn by rote. It's very distinct to emulate and demonstrate through your energy, through your way of being, how to really operate in the world. But I think with music, I'm very lucky because I get to actually model that and perform in a very authentic way on a daily basis. Even with my students
Absolutely.
today, it's almost like a second muscle. I can just get on the piano and we're, singing our do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do's and really learning the pedagogy, but also sharing that. And I think there's something very special. I think one of the things I want to speak to also is I had a phenomenal high school choir director. She was really one of my greatest sources of inspiration. I tell you, her name was Kathy Ann Roding. She's still alive, but she retired many years ago, and she ran on Dunkin' Donuts coffee, Hershey's chocolate, and dreams. Like she would come to us in choir rehearsal at the end of the day, and she would say, "I was up at 3 a.m. on my treadmill, and I was going through the score of Phantom of the Opera." She just operated from such a higher plane of creative
Wow.
existence. And she was the kind of teacher when I was in elementary school, she would do sort of like mini musical performances for the elementary students to kind of get them excited for the spring musical at the high school. And I remember asking my fourth grade teacher at the time, "Am I going to get to be with her? Am I going to get to perform with her?" And she said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I remember those 4 years of high school were just so precious and joyful. And you even, even hearing you list some of those bio achievements, I was so lucky that I got to travel to Italy and sing in Rome at St. Peter's. That I got to, and that was my sophomore year and my senior year of high school, getting to sing and perform. So to be that worldly cultured and experienced at such a young age was really an incredible blessing, tremendous fortune. And I feel lucky that whatever gifts that I'm able to share and stories that have, whether consciously or subconsciously imbued through my students, I'm very, very lucky to do that. So, um, and it's a constant, never-ending journey. So,
Wow, you're
but
so
we can kick it off
fortunate. I
on.
mean, she almost knew that you had this mission to do this incredible work when encouraging so many students. And your example is really amazing. You're always joyful and you're always so positive and so creative. So I think you almost answered the second question, but just let's go into that anyway and see if you'd like to add something. As a fellow Buddhist, how do you use music to encourage your students? And really, not just your students, but anybody, because music is the universal language, is the universal healer in many ways.
Absolutely. No, you touch on such a beautiful point. And as as cliche as it could be, it really is truth. And I think that's why people continue to say it. It's constantly quoted in posters that music is the universal language, and greeting cards even. I feel that going back to the example of when I was in high school, I remember, putting on these musicals, and we would do auditions in like November, December, and then January through March, it was like full on marathon training. And for those who aren't in that world, it is very similar to being an athlete where you're developing not only your physical musculature, but now you have this creative musculature as well. I literally remember when we had Phantom of the Opera, she was very particular because she wanted us all to stay healthy because of, very demanding, very challenging music
Of
to do,
course.
operatic music that for that age group. And I remember she let us sleep in on Saturdays. She did things a little bit differently with that musical than the other musicals in my high school career. But I remember specifically she had us go to the gym, like the lead roles go to the gym, one to stay healthy, but two, we really noticed a change in our vocal stamina as we were going to the gym. Like we were able to hit those high notes. We were able to really sustain that energy that is requisite throughout like the creative drama that is a musical, that is sort of Broadway work. And I think that one of the biggest lessons I learned from that sense of getting music as a universal language is that it really comes from joy and inspiration, but you also have to work for it. I think there was such a great lesson of you can achieve your dreams, but she always had a sense of community and even multiple communities helping us work together to really bring something to light. And I think reflecting now as a current music teacher, you know, I can only do as much as the communities around me. And that's not to say that I'm not very actively engaged. And I'm very lucky to have some tremendous colleagues and some wonderfully gifted creative students. But when you add the community component of being able to really come together, it's like if one person succeeds or if the entire ensemble succeeds, really it's everybody's success. Much the same way that if you have a sports team, people say that they root for the team. It's like you're not playing for the Yankees, but in a way, vicariously you are because there's such a strong sense of identity through that sense of the sport. And in a very similar way with the creative arts, with the fine and performing arts, it is really spectacular. And I think just on a daily basis, I teach elementary students. So I love one of my favorite things is to do Fun Fridays. So we have a lot of circle games, a lot of, sort of echo songs like Charlie over the ocean, Charlie over the ocean. So a lot of sing song echo songs where they're echoing back and they're doing things to, they don't even know they're being tested, but they're just really engaging with each other. And I think if there's one thing that I really want for my students, apart from developing musicianship, is really learning how to be in community and be in connection to each other, especially in the 21st century where there are so many unknowns. We
Yes.
can never predict what's going to happen, outside the classroom, but being able to develop relational skills, those soft skills are really starting to take a focus. It's so funny seeing a paradigm shift between centuries and what you think was going to be the important feature.
Yeah.
But music and the fine arts, I feel very lucky to be able to teach in a discipline where we can we can play, we can analyze music, we can look at chord structure, we can discuss lyrics and how even the words interplay with the music in a way that's poetic and elevated. So I hope that fully
Wow.
answers all of that. I tend to go on little tangents, but I feel that that resonates with the sense of just the day to day. And again, I feel really lucky that I have children that are so open that are really available to musicality and creativity.
I really think that your students are going to say the same exact thing about you that you've said about your teacher and amazing mentor who you had, as a
Thank you.
music teacher. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you must bring so much joy into the classroom. Um, why do you think music unites us? And can it help us lead a happy and healthy life in some way?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm still doing it. So clearly there's some benefit, whether, conscious or subconscious. But I think, going back to that idea of music as a universal language, we talk about words that are music specific or in the sound specific discipline, like vibration, resonance, harmony, melody. And again, those same words are very applicable to even Buddhism.
Sure.
When you're chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo or chanting, we call it Daimoku, sort of the prayer. There's something about when you're attuning your life to the rhythm of the universe. I can tell you the days that I'm really focused and tapped in, tuned in, turned on, my life works. It is resonant with the universe. And then the days where I'm not, or even the moments where I'm not, because it's so easy to go through, the 10 worlds, to go through every different emotional atmosphere on a daily basis. But I can tell those moments where I'm in resonance with my environment or even with myself and when I'm not. And I feel very lucky that with music, vibration is accessible to all.
Yes.
Whether, even if I'm not speaking the same language, if you were speaking German and I'm
Yes.
speaking Mandarin Chinese, even if I'm not understanding the exact words, that energy is still, it's like a mystical spell that's being cast, whether you're conscious or subconsciously aware of it. That sense of affect and tone. And again, German, you'd be saying I love you in German and it could sound very rough and gruff. But German is actually such a beautiful language. I've been privileged to, sing a few arias here and there.
Oh, how
But
wonderful.
yeah, it is, I think the fact that there's so many different genres, especially when I get to teach my students, like stylistically, there's Baroque, there's classical periods in Western music, but then also looking at like contemporary music, like Afro-Caribbean, the pop music they're listening to,
Mm,
alternative music, even
mm,
like lo-fi chill beats. It's not music without words, but you're still creating an atmosphere. And again, I think that with the words we speak, but also the music we create, the sounds we create, we always have a choice whether we choose to be harmonious or disharmonious. Um, and that's not a judgment. I think it's human nature. I certainly don't get it right. 31 years later into this cosmic existence, but it
31
is
years
really
young.
beautiful. 31 years young. Oh, I love you, Arlaana. Yes, you know me so well. But there is something about, especially when you're singing with resonance, like I have a group of fourth graders this year that I actually had in third grade last year. They're a gifted and talented set of
Uh,
students, and it was so exciting hearing their voices again this first full week of school, where I can hear in their voices how much they've grown, and even singing together. We're just singing a simple C scale on the piano, but they're so
mm,
tuned in, and it literally is almost like we're one coherent organism vibrating and humming. And there's a real sense of unity and a real sense of connection. And I think I would challenge anybody who is in that space to not feel lonely when you're really singing in
mm.
harmony, or you're acting together, or you're having some sort of creative work, but especially when there's the power of the voice involved. There's something very intimate and very beautiful, in a socially cohesive way. And I feel really lucky that I get to facilitate that.
And I love what you just said about, how can you feel lonely in that kind of environment? So, in a way, do you want to speak to how music can heal? Because just to share, I had for a while a group of autistic children, and as soon as we started doing musical instruments, they immediately connected to that, and I was
Yeah.
just so inspired. So, I don't know if you wanted to speak to music as a healer.
Absolutely, I'd love to discuss that. And I'm so happy you have the questions because again, it can be so easy for me to like fly off on my own comment into a tangent. But I think music absolutely is healing. And again, there's plenty of neuroscience research, there's plenty of psychological studies and musicology studies that demonstrate the healing effects. As an educator, speaking firsthand from that point of view, I have a couple of sections of students with autism that I teach on a semester basis. And again, what's really exciting is this year, it's my second year with them. So they already have a relationship with me. And I can tell you that the hardest part is really developing that relationship where, for students, for children, or even teenagers that are neurodivergent, just having them feel regulated and feeling safe is
Yes,
a revolutionary act of challenge. And for me, just like in our Buddhist practice, you never know the seeds that you plant, how they're going to blossom, where they're going to blossom, if they're even going to
absolutely.
blossom. And the same thing goes with music. So I know one of the things I do is I bring around a music cart. So I have a lot of tactile instruments. So usually around the end of class, I'll give them some time to, if they want to shake the maracas, if they want to play on the player piano or, play on the rainbow glockenspiel, they're able to really do that. And one, that's really grounding. I think, again, being able to like play the drum or even like tap your foot, those things that really physically engage you with the music, especially when you're music making or musicking, as some sociologists, musicologists will say, there is a very reverberating effect that goes throughout the body, even for me. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times there's been a full moon and I'm breaking out the drums for my kids because I just know I'm not going to fight that energy. I'm going to ride it with them. And they enjoy it. So it's a win-win. But I think too, being able to attune to going back to the example of the students with autism, being able to really attune to them and also meet them where they're at, because they're not being able to regulate sound. It, and again, I'm no expert on autism, but imagine that you have no control over your senses and you're getting flooded everywhere with everything all at once. It's almost
Yes,
like turning lights on and off. And I can tell you, if it were 5 o'clock in the morning and you had somebody probably turning lights on and off, that's an inkling of the sensation of what
yes.
it's really like to not be able to have full control over those functions. And I feel grateful that we've had so many advances where I can pull up a YouTube video and they can draw shapes with sort of calming music, and it's activating different senses for them that are soothing rather than activating in a aggravating or an agitating way. But also, even speaking from a personal perspective, just music on the ability of healing. I have a good friend who does sound bath healing, and she has her own set of sound bowls and crystal bowls,
Uh-huh.
and it's something that I always look forward to it. And I usually put my headphones on, I sink into the couch, and it's so amazing how after 30 minutes I could, maybe be a little bit tired or I'm, just caught up in the feels, as the kids would say.
Wow.
And 30 minutes later, you have different notes, like you have a C that's corresponding to, anybody who's familiar with chakras, some believe that certain notes resonate with certain energy points in the body. But and I do believe there is something to that because I have felt it. And even in certain breaking studies, I know in cancer patients and other um, alternative treatment methods, they have used sound healing in a variety of ways. So, music, never underestimate the power of sound and vibration, especially when it's one that is really harmonious to you. Even people who listen to like heavy metal, think of maybe somebody who's really angry or really, struggling. Even to them, the sound of, punk music or like that heavy metal music, there is something healing and cathartic to that. So I think there's something beautiful that there's all types of music and all types of sound. And even if there is disharmony in the world, there is a way to bring ourselves back into harmony with whatever
Mm,
sound, whatever musicality really speaks to us.
that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Wow. Wow. I wish I could be in your class. I want to be in elementary school. Um,
Welcome anytime.
I might be a little bit too old for them. Christopher, I know you also have some personal goals, some things you would like to sing, perform. You want to share a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Of course. Yeah, it's so exciting that, again, I've been very lucky and privileged that I perform in some of the most historic venues in the world. I still remember the St. Peter's Basilica, being 16 years old,
Wow.
and having
Oh my
that,
gosh.
5 o'clock mass. And then I remember when we sang in Notre Dame Cathedral, and again, I feel so lucky to have done it before, it caught on fire. I remember our choir director, Kathy Ann saying, okay, look, guys, technically we're not supposed to sing here, but we're just going to sing first and ask for forgiveness later. And I mean, we're better to do that than in a church that's over 800 years old,
Of
right?
course.
And I don't think I even mentioned this to you, but I actually had a solo in one of the songs that we like one of the sets that we performed. And I literally remember when my solo was coming off for Arlaana, it was almost this. It really was an out of body experience. And I was like, I'm in this hallowed hall. We already had a crowd of people gathered around us, and we were
Wow.
singing in Swahili. We're singing like Baba Yetu. I think it was from a Minecraft or a video game music, but it was this beautiful African rendition. And I
Wow.
remember just belting it out, and it really was such a spiritual, ecstatic experience. And I think about how the historians spoke of like songs being like angels, and it touches you in that way. I guess for something that I would love to experience or have yet to experience
Yes.
in my own personal life as a musician, I was just taught teaching my fifth graders about like kind of music production and building a song, and I took Sia's Cheap Thrills, one of my favorite Australian artists, and we were going through the different parts, like the vocal part, the a cappella background vocals, the synthesizer, the guitars, and I kind of made it an analogy to like a layer cake. Like, what would it be like if you separated all these components and then I put it
Wow.
back together? And I
Wow.
remember asking them, how would does your listening to the song sound different than before when we were just listening to it as a song, but you didn't realize all those cooperative components? I would be so excited to really partner up with somebody who's really great on music technology and music sound production, and to sort of be in the studio when like there's that hit song being made, not because I'm trying to crank out, $1 million hit, but just for the joy of creation where you're actually in the studio and you're seeing somebody who's a master at work, and then being able to lend my creative talents in whether it's vocal, whether it's piano, and just being able to have that true collaborative
Mm.
nature. That would be so exciting for me to really be in that setting. And I've gotten close a couple of times. I remember even in college getting to do kind of like an a cappella album. We never got it for some reason. It was a shady record producer. But there is something really exciting about being in the studio and getting to sort of work magic with your sound. It's like, I guess my version of Harry Potter's Hogwarts would be a sound studio and
I love it.
getting to really, do that. So that's a goal that's yet to happen, but definitely believe that, everything's
Well,
possible.
I
So
see in your future you working with Herbie Hancock, who's a fellow Buddhist and has done
yes,
amazing things around the
yes.
globe. Christopher, this has been so wonderful and so inspiring to speak with you. And I just really treasure you and treasure each of your students who really get the opportunity to work with you. Did you want to say something else before we wrap up?
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
We always end with encouraging words, and this is from our mentor, Daisakali Cater. And I thought this was so encouraging because he also adored music in every way and even started an organization in Japan called the Minon Organization. So he says, music knows no barriers. It transcends national borders, language, culture, and ethnicity, bringing hearts together in a symphony of peace. It's exactly what you were talking about. The true target of music is not the ear. Music speaks to the soul, creating a harmony of empathy and friendship that reverberates in our hearts. At times, it can impart in us the courage to live. At times, summon forth a prayer for peace, and at times, awaken our human dignity. Such are the beneficial powers of music. So if you wanted to add a little something, if not, we'll close and I'll just tell everybody where to find us, but go ahead, Christopher.
No, I mean, just aho, amen, nam myoho renge kyo to everything you just read. I mean, Sensei Spirit, he just encapsulated everything. And the only thing I can add to that is, again, that joy of really being in community and in
Yes.
friendship to music. And I just feel so lucky I've had the opportunity to perform friendship concerts and participate in community ensembles. Just, there's much harmony still to create, and we all get to be a part of that. We get to be conscious co-creators of peace.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, you couldn't have said it better. Co-creators of peace. Wow. Well, Christopher Marsala, this has been a delight and amazing. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, find us at Don't Mess with the Mamas. That's Mommas podcast. You can find us at Amazon Music, Facebook, and other platforms as well. And we are on Libsyn, Libsyn. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to write something to Christopher, I can relay it to him. It's mommas, Mommas .podcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much once again, Christopher, for sharing so much. This has been such an enriching and enlightening experience. And thank you so much, listeners. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks again, and bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Bye.